So my testimony is one that I actually love sharing. I love sharing what God did for me because I know it inspires others to know what He can do for them as well. And so for me, I was not raised in a Christian home. I wasn't raised in a typical church background. My mother is Japanese and my father is American. He passed away whenever I was 9 months old, leaving my mom with no family and alone in America to raise me by herself. And so she did the best she could, and it was just an interesting childhood. It was one of those things where I knew my mother loved me, and I experienced having a lot of things and all of that, but then there not really being, any affection or any of those kind of things. And then eventually when I got older, it just becoming very abusive and just stressful and all of that. And so I found myself doing a lot of crazy things. A lot of it typical that teenagers that don't have any focus or purpose on their mind do. And I was just wild. I mean, I did what teenagers do when you don't know the Lord. And with all that being said, I kind of made a mess of my life and ended up in an abusive relationship. I went into the Air Force, ended up in an abusive relationship, and with one child and pregnant with the second. And so it was at that place where I had really gotten to a place where I was so broken that I just didn't know what I would do. I didn't know how to live anymore. I had lost my will to live. I had lost my desire to live, my self-esteem through the bad choices I had made, and the abusive situation I was in. It was just all wearing on me, and I had gotten to the place where I didn't want to live anymore. And that is when God truly stepped into my life, and I found Jesus Christ in that life-changing way. It was then that when He started sending a lady to witness to me, and when she started witnessing to me, originally I used to run away from her because I didn't want to go to church. I didn't know what church was about. I had just heard some things about church, and I really just wasn't interested. And so, but when I finally realized that she was being sent, and it was like a light bulb, like an aha moment for me, where I finally realized that whenever I was talking to this God that I did not know, challenging whether He was real, and that if He was, He would help me with this ridiculous pain that was going on in my life. And I've always shared this, my initial prayers were really not for deliverance, but really was for death. God, if you're real, then don't let me wake up in the morning, then bring me home to be with you, because I can't tolerate life this painful anymore. And He didn't answer my prayers with death, thank God, but He answered my prayers with life. And He started sending that church lady into my life, and always witnessing and always trying to get me to come to church. And I'm glad that one day I finally realized that she was being sent, and I went and I asked her where to go, and I started going to church and getting the word. And I didn't understand it at first. I didn't understand. It was just the presence of love there. I don't even know if I knew it was love then. It was just something about being there that made me want to keep going. And that's just how little I knew about church. I didn't know that it was the presence of God. I didn't know it was the love of God. It was just something about being there that made the hell of my life a little bit more tolerable that week. And so I did all the things that I used to do, but I would just go to church on Sundays. And then eventually, a few months in, I didn't get saved that first Sunday. A few months in, a few weeks in of going, and then finally one Sunday I gave my life to Christ, and it was at that moment that truly everything changed. It was at that moment that the love of God flooded my soul, and it was the first time that I can ever remember feeling unconditional and total love for who I was. And that just, it completely changed me. It started a relationship with God that made me want to be a different person, that made me have hope again and desire again to learn what it meant to live life. And that just began to erupt into a passion. I didn't understand reading the Word or seeking the Word in the beginning, and when someone told me that in order for me to know how to please Him, I needed to know the Word, that was why I started reading it, because I loved Him and I knew He loved me. And I just wanted to know what it was I could do to be different, and to be more like Him and to please Him and all of those things. So I began a passionate relationship with the Word of God after that, because when I learned that as I read the Word, He and His Spirit would teach me how to live, then I realized that it was like I was desperate, like I needed to be in the Word every day. I needed to know what it meant to live a life that would be pleasing to God. And he taught me how to live. He inspired me to change. He fulfilled me to not need the things that were considered sinful anymore. It was truly a life transformation. But for me, it was very much an inside-out job. I was never a conformist. I wasn't going to do what they wanted me to do anyway. And if anything, I was kind of rebellious. So it wasn't just it wasn't only being a nonconformist. It was also being, like I said, a tad bit rebellious. If you told me what I couldn't do, I would prove to you that I could. And so it just wasn't in me to let people tell me what I was allowed to wear, what I wasn't allowed to wear, who I was allowed to listen to on the radio, what I was allowed to watch. It just wasn't, you weren't going to change me that way. People tried, it just wasn't working. But it was when the Word of God began to inspire me, change me, teach me why I needed to change, why I needed to be careful what I allowed in and out of my life. And with that, everything began to change from the inside out, and there's never been a day of going back. And so it's truly been an awesome life. Now what would have been broken, now I'm happily married. I have 6 children. My children are growing up, I believe, just loving God and, excited about life and equipped to go forward and do some things. There are so many reasons why, I could just go on and on and on about the way God has blessed my life. I have had things I never thought I would have. I've been to places I never thought I would go. But more than anything is that whether I was in a private jet or whether I was, in the back of a Greyhound bus, it really didn't matter. It was the presence of God that has been in my life from the day I allowed him in until this day, until the day I go home to be with him in glory. All of that has been marked by his presence and his love. And what I've learned is, just like Paul said, I've learned in whether I'm abasing or I'm abounding, no matter what situation I'm in, I've learned to be content. I've received to be content. The contentment that I walk in, the peace that I have in life, it comes from the inside out. And that is because of the power of God, the love of God, and the power of his word to inspire and change. So I pray that my testimony, I didn't have it together. I didn't know what it meant to be a Christian. I didn't know what it meant to live a righteous life. I pray that it would inspire you to know you don't have to be church. You don't have to get it together. And even if you have been to church, but you know you're not doing the stuff you're supposed to, you know what? That's okay. He loves you like you are. Allow him to draw you in with his love, inspire you with his word, and change you from the inside out.